This is crazy, and it should come as no surprise that Chris Drury is continuously trying to make the Rangers better, and a new trade target that Rangers fans are familiar with may have just been revealed, as well as another player that Rangers fans are very familiar with for all the wrong reasons. Could he end up joining the Rangers? We're going to dive into that and some fun stuff today, and we're going to break it all down. But before we do, a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. About 70% of you watching our videos are not actually subscribed to the channel. And if you want to stay up to date with everything New York Rangers, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It's free. There's no harm in doing it, and you get to keep up to date with everything Rangers. But we're going to dive into some fun stuff and some interesting stuff, including a new trade target that the Rangers could be looking at as soon as, a few weeks from now, or maybe heading into the trade deadline. We'll talk about it when we get there later in the video. But first, some fun stuff, a fun little proposition and fun article here from Stan. After the Leafs dump John Tavares, the Rangers just might lure him back to New York. Now, I know what you're thinking. We'll stop right there for a second. It's crazy. That is absolutely insane. I can already see the comments being written. That is an insane thing to propose, but hear me out and hear Stan out. This was a fun article that he wrote where he got some fan perspective on things, including John Tavares, possibly coming to the Rangers. Obviously familiar with New York, but not the Rangers. Obviously played for the Islanders and left there for Toronto. And Toronto just stripped him of the captaincy, right? The Leafs are moving on with Austin Matthews as the captain. Maybe not stripped him of the captaincy. They moved, they gave it to Austin Matthews, but nonetheless, he's not the captain anymore, and his contract is up after this year. So very interesting to keep an eye on. And from Stan, once again, there is a world where the Rangers could target John Tavares once he becomes an unrestricted free agent next offseason. John Tavares, a Ranger, it could happen, but the likelihood is not great. It could happen because anything can happen in hockey, and supposedly a lifetime Oiler, Wayne Gretzky, obviously got traded to the Los Angeles Kings in the 90s, so obviously anything is possible. Now, on the John Tavares front, him becoming a Ranger, I feel like Rangers fans are saying no, although he could help maybe the third line in a reduced role. He's going to make less money. Obviously, you can't think of him as the $11 million player that he is right now. Brings some leadership, responsibilities as well. But, when you look at John Tavares, I think it's very unlikely that he leaves Toronto at all until retirement at this point. And if he was to go anywhere, I don't think it's going to be the Islanders again, because that ended horribly, obviously. It's not going to be the Islanders, but he is familiar with New York. So there is a world where maybe that happens. I don't know if we're very close to that, multi-dimensional world, but very interesting, proposition here. And the fugitive from Long Island, Tavares' contract ends at the end of the upcoming season, or as my man in Toronto, Del Mundo, puts it, the pajama boy might move on. Of course, that whole thing with the pajama pitcher when he first signed with Toronto. And of course, Rangers fans, of course, not fond of Tavares for the many years he played in New York, on Long Island with the Islanders. And, obviously the Rangers fans don't want this player either. So pretty hilarious proposition here. And honestly, and this is very interesting in the article from Stan. He was interviewing some fans. So this is from fans. I'd almost respect him a little bit more if he did that and signed with the Blue Shirts, if he really leaned into being a villain. Sports is all about good versus evil, and you need folks to wear the black hat. And I thought that was a very interesting quote to isolate. I'd almost respect him a little bit more if he did that and signed with the Blue Shirts. Obviously, in sports, you need good versus evil. I thought this quote was great. You need good versus evil. And if you signed with the Rangers, could you imagine the rivalry heading into next season with the New York Islanders? I think that would be crazy. That would be unbelievable to watch. But again, I feel like Rangers fans are ready to move off of this topic because it's probably not going to happen, right? So, but yeah, a lot of interesting perspective here on Tavares. While I respect Tavares as a person, the Rangers don't need him, nor should they want him. And that's the other thing, too. Tavares is a natural centerman. He would play center, and, you got Trocheck. You guys have been a Jad. There is no need for another center of that caliber to spend the money on. So go out and get a third-line center, I think, would be the next move. Because, Hito is kind of, thrust in there right now. We'll take a look at the lineup, for example. We don't know what's going to happen with Capo Caco either. And Hito's kind of thrust in there as the third-line center right now, but I don't think that's a long-term plan. Even if you're going for the Stanley Cup, I feel like you have to acquire hire somebody else at the deadline. And speaking of which, there may be a new Rangers trade target already, on the board here late in the offseason, and that is a former Ranger in Frank Vatrano. And this came out just a couple days ago from the Bleacher Report in a new way too early prediction for the 2025 NHL trade deadline. They predicted that Frank Vatrano will head back to New York. And I think that's very interesting because, of course, the Ducks are still in a rebuild, right? And they want to probably shed some of their better players for draft picks at the trade deadline. And if you're the Rangers, I think you're having to get prepared for, shedding draft picks at the deadline, for example, because heading into this postseason, the ultimate goal is the Stanley Cup, and you're in a window right now. And I say a window, it's this year, right? Because now you got to sign contracts after next year, like Shesterkin, like Lafreniere, like Miller. There's a lot of money that's going to be taken up in those contracts that you can't spend the wealth in other places on the team. And that might create a logjam and not a logjam, but some issues along the way, right? So looking at a player like Vatrano this year, you're going to have to, I think, get comfortable with the fact that you're going to give up draft picks maybe for a player like this again. And I think this player can help you in the playoffs. So obviously way too early trade deadline prediction because this player will probably play out the season before being traded, or most of the season, that is. I don't see this player being traded right away at the start of the season, nor do I think the Rangers are going to make a big trade to start the season. But I think Chris Drury has set up the Rangers to make a big splash at the trade deadline, and I think that is exciting if you're a Rangers fan, because they have quite a bit of salary cap space still for this season, at least. I think they have to be very careful with that. They could probably get some UFAs in there, but adding anyone with significant term could be an issue, because I think that was the whole reason for getting Riley Smith as well. You upgrade that position as well. We can take a look here. He's going to play on the first line here. This, of course, is just a mock-up. He may not end up there. He could end up on the second line, although I wouldn't mess with that second line. It was very good in the second half of the season and, of course, the playoffs. So much to think about for the Rangers this year, and it's going to be a fun year. But again, like I said, you're probably going to have to be okay with the fact that you're going to give up a lot this year to really go for it this season, this Stanley Cup, the 2025 Stanley Cup, because it's going to get much harder after that. Obviously, the Rangers will still be a great team, an elite team at that, but it's going to get much harder to continuously compete for the Stanley Cup when you have a lot. You can't spread the wealth as much throughout the lineup, so it's going to be very interesting. So let me know in the comments what you think of Frank Vatrano possibly returning to the New York Rangers. I think that would be very interesting and possibly a good fit, because, of course, I thought he played well a couple playoffs ago for the New York Rangers, so that would be a good fit. And let me know what you think of John Tavares joining the Rangers possibly. Long shot. Don't think he leaves Toronto, but I thought there was some pretty funny tidbits here from some fans as well. So let me know what you think in the comments. And you know what? One thing is true. I think sports possibly does need some more good versus evil, or just some more rivalries. I feel like we've gotten away from that in hockey, at least. So hopefully we see some of that this season. It's going to be a fun season. So let me know what you think in the comments. And if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with everything New York Rangers.